Alrighty. Yeah, here it is. We're starting another one, folks. Another one. We are back, and I've been I've been slacking on my duties. Haven't been streaming. Took a little bit of time. Had a couple of bad brain days. Had a hospital appointment that I had to go to here in Korea. But the good news is I did get a prescription with a 90-day refill. So, that came out really good. In case you're wondering, I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy, American expat here in Korea. So for those people that don't know, what my wife and I did, we sold everything in the United States. The house, the car, the truck, the guns, the ammo, the emergency food supplies, the guns, the ammo, more guns, more ammo, and everything, including the kitchen junk drawer. We sold everything with the exception of 2 suitcases, and we ended up retiring here in Korea. So it's been quite the interesting journey, and we've been here in Korea for just over 3 years, and we have a lot of time prior to Korea. So we've got that going on. A lot of people are kind of wondering, why did you retire in Korea? Well, my wife has Korean ancestry. She was a Korean citizen. We met, we married, our eyes crossed, a crowded room. We fell in love and all of that. And we're going on 35 plus years. She became an American citizen, excuse me. And then after that, did a bunch of work and decided that retirement in the United States was not as attainable as it is overseas, and retiring overseas allowed us to retire early, which is bonus. That was a huge bonus. And then with that, we were able to stay in Korea because of my wife's ancestry here and used to be a Korean citizen. So that's how we got our F1 and F4 visa. The wife has the F4, I have the F1, and boom, we are retired here in Korea. So today we're going to talk about it. RIK, in case you're wondering, stands for Retired in Korea. And we have Terry that pops up. Terry pops up and says, hi, hey, how's it going? Hey, I did get your emails, by the way. And some interesting stuff. With that, we got somebody else on board. If you want to say hi, feel free to do that. But in today's Retired in Korea, we're going to be talking about suing her husband. Kind of going back to a previous story, dissolving churches. Yes, Korea is talking about dissolving religious churches here in Korea. Trans college, that's kind of an interesting thing because I didn't think I would see that here in Korea. There's a little scuttle going on with that. Immigrant raid death. And that is kind of an interesting thing and unfortunate at the same time. And the questionable visa runs. Yes. All of this and probably some more, and we'll kind of rant and go on some other stuff. But that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's jump right in. On a previous video, we talked about a Thai victim scalding case to sue her Korean husband. And what that entailed is that you had this Korean husband. He had a Thai wife, and as she was sleeping, he boiled a pot of water and poured it onto her face, burning her. Her whole face was bandaged. It looks like 2nd and 3rd degree burns. And the reason he did it, because he didn't want other guys to try to hook up with her. He figured if she was ugly, then they wouldn't hit on her, and she would be his. Yeah, that's some freaky shit. I don't know about you, but yeah. It was really, really bad. So obviously the guy, and the very strange and disturbing thing, when we talked about that, the Korean guy who poured the scalding water on his Thai wife's face and head, he wasn't arrested. They were waiting for an arrest warrant. And so far, we don't know if he has been arrested yet. I know in the United States, it's kind of a thing that there's domestic violence and the police show up, boom, it's a done deal. You are arrested and your goose is cooked. Here in Korea, apparently not so much. That is very disturbing. Now I could get it if it ends up that, the police show up or the police are called and the husband and the wife are going at it and they're both going at it. Oh, you did this and and they're hitting each other. And it's kind of like, okay, break it up. There. Hold on. I can see where it's like, okay, let's calm down. And, that's the way it used to be. But when clearly there has been a severe assault, and I guess pouring boiling hot water on your spouse's face as they were sleeping and they're bandaged and they have second and third degree burns, that kind of warrants an arrest, an immediate arrest. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. I don't know. Maybe I'm just too old and crotchety and, I'm not with the times. Maybe that's what's going on. But yeah, so now the story unfolds some more. So I thought we'd cover this a little bit more. The suspect in the front right is accused of dousing his wife's face with boiling water. Again, the whole idea was to make her ugly so other people wouldn't hit on her or she wouldn't go out, or it's just some weird thing. And the reason he's not he arrives at Ouijanbu District Court for his arrest warrant hearing. So this is days after. This is days after the incident. I don't get it. And he's not in cuffs. For something as serious as this, you would think he would be in handcuffs, but that's not the way they do business here. So anyway, while she was sleeping, she was preparing to file a civil lawsuit seeking damages. The Thai Embassy of South Korea told the Korean Herald Wednesday. The embassy says it has helped the victim retain legal counsel, and she's currently consulting a lawyer about pursuing a civil case. That's great, but there should be a criminal case, without a doubt. It added that her condition was improving. The alleged attack while she was sleeping left severe burns on 40% of her body. Seriously, 40% of her body. Suspect is also facing criminal charges for the incident, which police view as a deliberate attack. Say it isn't so. You had to think about it. You had to get a pot. You had to get the water, put the water in the pot. You had to turn the stove on, which here in Korea, you got to turn on the gas valve, and then you got to go to the stove, and then you have to start the fire for the gas on the stove, and then put the pot with the water on it and let it come to a boil. Yeah, it is premeditated. That's all I'm saying. They issued an arrest warrant for the husband, citing concerns that he could flee. It's like, seriously, why didn't you arrest him that day? I don't get it. He arrived at the court at 10:30 a.m. for a warrant review hearing, wearing a black coat and face mask. He allegedly poured boiling water from a kettle onto his wife's face. The woman sustained severe facial burns and rushed to a hospital. Medical staff alerted police around 9 p.m. suspecting domestic abuse. Yeah, I guess when she said, hey, he did this to me, there's probably a thing. Police issued emergency protective measures include restraining an order and an order barring the suspect from contacting the victim. Don't go near her. I know what you did. You boiled the water, you poured it on her face, you disfigured her. 40% of her body is burned because of you, but we're giving you an order to don't go near her. Does that sound like, I don't know, if you pour scalding water on a person as they sleep and give them burns on 40% of their body, I don't think they're in their right mind to follow an order. In the United States, he would be arrested immediately. That's all I'm saying. But here in Korea, don't go near her. What if he was like the crazy guy, the stalker who we talked about the other day, where he climbed up the outside of an apartment building pipe up 6 floors and went and unalived a person with a knife? They had protective orders too. Don't go near her, but sometimes it just doesn't make sense. The suspect is saying he attacked his wife to make her ugly so that she would not see other men. I don't know. something's wrong in Pound Town, and it's all his fault. Later, he claimed the injuries were accidental, saying he spilled the hot water on her after tripping. Oh, my bad, I just tripped. So he changed his story. This should be an immediate arrest, in my opinion. That's all I'm saying. It's just, that's what it should be. That's what it should be. Let's see what else it has to say. The case drew public attention after the victim posted photos on social media, which her face was all bandaged up. The suspect reportedly apologized and asked for forgiveness. Oh my gosh, my bad, I'm sorry. Forgive me, it's all good, right? You don't have to arrest me. We don't have to bring this into court. She's only disfigured on 40% of her body. It's no biggie. It just... And again, the conflicting story of he did it to make her ugly so other men wouldn't go out with her. And then he said, oh, I tripped. You know, that just doesn't make sense at all. But some of these things that happen in Korea and other countries just makes you scratch your head. And it's like, why would you even try that? Everybody can see through it. So you boiled a hot kettle of scalding water, and what you end up doing is that, you know, I don't know about you. Whenever I boil water, I'm using it in the kitchen. So would I take a scalding kettle of water and go to the couch? No. In the living room? No. Would I go to the bedroom with the scalding? No, I wouldn't. Would I go to any other room in the house? No. It would always stay in the kitchen. It absolutely makes zero sense whatsoever. Anyway, the victim said she did not wish to continue the relationship, and rightly so, and explained that she went to the hospital with her husband because she could not afford medical expenses on her own. In other words, she is a foreign wife, and yeah, she's totally dependent on him. It doesn't sound like a good relationship. You know, the fact that she had to have her husband in tow tells you it's a red flag for an abusive relationship. Because if she can't go to the hospital on her own and she doesn't have her own money, yeah, red flag. Huge red flag. That's all I'm saying. And then the lying and everything else. Thailand's ambassador, Tani Sangrat, visited the victim on December 8th to wish her swift recovery and coordinate to provide legal assistance. Several Thai non-government organizations have contacted the embassy to offer assistance with medical expenses. So, yeah, this was it. And that was the picture of her. Poor lady. I mean, seriously. You need to have the Punisher. You know, and for those of you who don't know, the Punisher is a comic character that he's kind of a vigilante type of guy. I'm not saying that everybody should actually do this in real life, but the Punisher is a guy that is a vigilante and, you know, stands up for the innocent, so on and so forth. And he does much violence to those who do violence on the innocent. And I don't know. But the fact that this happened on December 3rd, and yeah, it's this, what, the 18th? It is the 18th. So it's been a minute. and this article was posted on the 17th. So yeah, he's just showing up to, yeah. It's just, what do you do with that? That's just insane. You know, and then trying to change his story and say, oh, well, I boiled a bunch of water and then I went to the couch or the bedroom and I tripped and actually spilled all of this scalding hot water on my wife's face. It was my bad. It was an accident. Come on. You changed your story. You're guilty. And just, that's one of the things that bothers me about Korea. With something as this serious of a domestic abuse case that he was not immediately arrested, I just don't get that. You know, I agree that when you live in another country, they have different laws and rules and procedures and, you know, for their legal system and all that. But this just boggles the mind. And it boggles the mind of my wife, who was born and raised in Korea. It makes absolutely no sense. You know, imagine if that was your daughter and that happened to her. It's just absolutely crazy. Let's see, we got Zombie Hunter pops in and says hello. And Zombie Hunter says there's going to be Christmas next week. Yes, it is true. Christmas is popping up. It's that time of year for all types of holidays, but Christmas is one of those. So kind of looking forward to that. I made a Christmas purchase for my 3D printing thing, so that's going to be interesting. But it's going to be a rough Christmas for this Thai wife of this Korean husband. But yeah, she's looking to sue, and we need to get rid of that. Sue her husband, so she's seeking as a civil, for civil damages and so on and so forth. And again, he had to go to court for an arrest hearing. I mean, I understand if it was so ambiguous or vague that you would need to go to court because, but something as blatant as, burning 40% of your wife's body with scalding hot water and the majority, on her head, I don't think you need a hearing for that. I think that's an immediate arrest. I'm just saying that I mean, what do you think? Do you think that is like, it's okay? And for those of you who don't know, here in Korea, I've talked about it in the past, that there are things that happen that if you abscond from justice and you stay away for X amount of time, and it all depends on the crime, that if you kind of hide from justice and going to court, that eventually you're just let off the hook. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing. And there's actually cases of where people have actually even gone to court, got sentenced, received a punishment, but it's like, hey, you're going to show up next week and you're going to go to jail or whatever it is. And then they don't show up. And then after X amount of years, depending on the crime, it's all just boom, it's done. They don't have to serve that time. It's just one of those obscure laws that just needs to go away. We got Muzzle Front. Oh, you dirty little bastard. You found me. Good to see you, beautiful human being, you. You as well, sir. Yes. Muzzle Front and I have a little bit of a history in the United States. We used to do some shooting together and some self-defense and all that. Excellent firearms instructor. And so, yeah, I highly recommend Muzzle Front for those of you in the United States. Hands down, without any reservation whatsoever, he is your go-to guy. So, yeah. Let's see who else we got. We got Sparky. Sparky pops up and says, hello. Good to see you. So, yeah, we've got that going on. The Thai victim. Yeah, so Korean laws are very different. And when it comes to self-defense, it's very different here in Korea. Now, they do have self-defense laws, very different than in the United States. Do not use a weapon to defend yourself here in Korea because you will get dinged big time. So basically, let's say you're out and you're at dinner and something gets drunk from... People get drunk and somebody gets in a fight with you or whatever, and then they're just beating the tar out of you, and you like grab a weapon or use a weapon to defend yourself from said person. You will be charged with using that weapon. Okay, in Korea, self-defense is a very, very different thing. What Korean lawyers recommend is run away. Run and live to fight another day or not fight at all. Because actually, if you engage in the fighting, you're fighting. And that's kind of one of the weird oddities of being here in Korea is the self-defense laws. So that is very different than what it was in the United States when I was there. Pretty much 24/7, I was carrying a firearm or a knife. And even at home, I carried a firearm. So yeah, it was just one of those weird, freaky, and I taught firearms and all this stuff. And it was just kind of my life. But I had to pull my gun twice. Didn't discharge it, but I had to pull my gun twice to change the mind of the person who was confronting me with lethal force, and they changed their mind once they saw the gun. But yeah, in the United States, it's very different. Muzzle Front says, I appreciate that a great deal, homie. Not a problem. Sparky says, hi from hot 30 degrees Celsius, Australia. yeah, it's getting a little chilly here. We're looking at about 25 degrees Celsius here, or 25 degrees Fahrenheit. So Celsius is whatever that is. Yeah, not hot. Zombie Hunter says, where in Australia is Sparky? And he says that he is near Sydney. So, and Zombie says that he's in Victoria, I'm guessing. Biggs Android shows up and says, yo, hello. Yes, Sparky says, nice. Yep, and we got Biggs. Biggs is on board and all that stuff. So we're talking about some weird stuff here in Korea. The self-defense laws. If it ends up, I am in the United States, if I was presented generally like I lived in Colorado, and if somebody attacked me and I was in fear for my life or severe bodily injury, I could defend myself using lethal force. And obviously, if somebody confronted me with lethal force, and I was in fear for my life or bodily injury, severe bodily injury, I could defend myself with lethal force. And there's a lot of cases in the United States where, that is the case. You have stand your ground laws. Colorado has this make my day law, which is a bunch of bullshit because they say, well, you can sue anybody and whatever, or you're immune from being sued, which is absolutely not true. It's a bogus thing. So that whole thing in Colorado is bogus about that make my day. But a lot of states do have stand your ground. And that's what's different here in Korea is that you don't have the right to stand your ground if there's a fight. So again, Korean lawyers, and I've talked to a couple of them, and they both agreed that the best thing to do is that if you're in a fight is to diddy on out of there, to leave, to run away. There's enough cameras everywhere. And so if you do not fight, and that person is the aggressor and you don't defend themselves and you go to the hospital, and if it's for a long time, the other person has to pay for your hospital bills and pain and suffering and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's not a lot of that in Korea. And also the fact that Korea, it's really hard to have a gun. It is extremely hard to have a gun. As a matter of fact, if I could have a gun, but I have to get a permit and I would have to take a safety test, which would be a piece of cake. I could probably teach them a ton of stuff on that. But I could get a firearm, but I can't keep it at home. Yeah, can't keep it at home. It has to be stored at a police station. And I think the limit for ammo is like 200 or 300 rounds a year is the max limit. And you have to justify the amount of ammo. And then when you go out and shoot, let's say I want to go out and shoot, I have to go to the police station. I have to say, hey, I'm going to go out shooting or I'm going to go hunting. This is where I'm going to go for hunting or shooting. This is how much ammunition. They record how much ammunition that you're going to use. And then when you come back, if you bring any back, it's a whole thing. And so gun possession here in Korea is very, very limited. So there's probably some of that has to do with there's not a lot of gun crime in Korea. Now, which is weird because I'm a huge proponent of the Second Amendment as a U.S. citizen. I believe in all the rights, free speech, redress, Second Amendment, right to bear arms and legs and everything else, if that's your thing. But with that, here in Korea, it is very, very different. Don't get caught with a weapon. And I would carry around, this is another thing. Where is that? I had a couple of knives. I had a couple of knives, and I would always at least carry one knife with me. With the thinking that if I ever get attacked, I'm 6'2" and 260 pounds. Okay. Somebody can best me. I can guarantee you that. But I felt that if ever I was getting my ass handed to me, I could always, level the playing field by having a knife, especially in a deadly force encounter. If I couldn't run away. So anyway, it ends up, it's like, don't do that. What? No, don't even do that. And so while people carry knives and, things like that, don't ever use it. Good Lord, not in a fight. It would be bad. I would probably lose my visa. So yeah, things are very different here. Sparky says, good advice, Steve. Just walk away if in trouble, but places like Korea and Hong Kong are very safe. Yes, they are. Matter of fact, they are. My wife and I have never felt unsafe here in Korea. And that's including the times before I got married, in places that I probably shouldn't have been, red light districts, I'm as a designated driver type person thing. I mean, gang members and kind of mafia types, but I've never felt unsafe. It just, I've never been robbed in Korea. I've never been assaulted in Korea. I've never been mean mugged. I've never had anybody body check me and try to, puff up and all that stuff. None of that has ever happened in Korea. But crime does happen, but it's extremely low. Muzzle Friend says, but not everywhere. Sultan pops in, says, good morning, Steve and everyone. Cool, sunny, lovely morning here in Korea. It is cool. It is cool indeed. The wife just stepped out to go do her yoga classes across the street, and she says it's pretty chilly. So, but it's supposed to get a little bit warmer today, I think. What is it? High of 45. High of 45, and today is Marketplace Day. So we'll probably go out and get into some of that cool, brisk, sunny weather that we have going on. So anyway, I don't know. What do you think about the, in a domestic dispute, especially something as serious as pouring scalding hot water on your spouse's head, 40% of her body is burned. Do you think that person should be immediately arrested, or should they wait a few days until the judge gives an arrest warrant? I don't know. I'm more for immediate arrest. We got somebody else. Sloan Seaman, 8776 says, 6'2", 262, you'll be fine. I'm 5'7", 140. I need to worry a bit more. Not here in Korea. Again, everybody that I've talked to here that are normal people have never had a problem in Korea. Never had a problem in Korea. Now, if you're going to act stupid, then that's a whole nother can of worms. If you're going to do stupid, you will find stupid, guaranteed. Good stuff. But I got to lose a little bit of weight, but I don't want to lose weight. I like being big, but yeah. Zombie Hunter says they should be in jail. I totally agree. If I was king for a day here in Korea, that is one of the things that I would change, is that if there is a severe domestic call such as this, you don't have to wait for an arrest warrant. You get arrested right then and there. That's just what I would do. I don't know. And I would have more trash containers in Korea, because for those of you who haven't been to Korea, let's say you go get coffee and you take it to go, and then you're walking down the streets or whatever, and you're like, hey, I need to throw my coffee cup away. And you're like, where are the trash cans? It's a clean place. So the whole 9 yards, there's places that aren't so clean. But I mean, trying to find a trash container as you're walking down the street is almost nigh impossible. And then when you do find trash containers for like apartment buildings and so on and so forth, they're not big enough. So you get more trash now than you did like 30 years ago, but they still have the same size trash containers that they did 30 years ago. And it's overflowing. It's like, Korea, come on, get with it. Build bigger trash containers. I mean, I just don't get it sometimes. There's some stuff that makes a lot of sense, and there's other stuff that makes you like, seriously? Come on, get with the times. Let's see. We got Tayrid 5419 says, ex-Navy here, lived 34 years, never had a problem. Wow, 34 years. I never had a problem either. And there was times before I was married, drunk and stupid, but I mean, never stupid, Let's see. Sloan pops up and says that he lived in Seoul for 3 years now. So far, so good. I've seen fights in Gangnam before. It happens, but like you said, it's not often. And, the fights are, it's not, I haven't seen any real fights. But then again, I was in the military. I worked in prisons for 11 years. I've been in a couple of riots. I've seen people get shanked. I've seen fights of Norteños and Sureños and the Crips and the white supremacists going at it in the yard. I mean, fights, real fights. But compared to that, Korea, the fights I've seen is just kind of like more pushy, shovey type of, and then, yeah, that's it. So, but other than that, It's very rare that I think I've seen maybe two fights, not counting the GIs fighting other GIs or whatever. So Zombie says no countries are perfect. No, and if there was, we would show up and it wouldn't be perfect anymore. So yeah, there's that. Let's talk about the next part, dissolving churches. This is an interesting thing because Korea wants to dissolve some religious churches. That's kind of alarming when you first think about that. It's like, wait, churches? You're going to get rid of... I mean, hell, they got churches in communist China. And now Korea's talking about getting rid of churches? Where does that come into play? Zombie says, any guards get shanked? Yeah, unfortunately. I've seen guards get beat up. Knew a couple guys that got cut. It is what it is. Not that they were the target, but they were just trying to apprehend said inmates, and they ended up getting cut with said shanks, and that wasn't, excuse me, it was weird because after the fact, of course the inmate got charged with additional crimes, but the inmate actually apologized to the guard and saying, hey, I didn't know it was you, I thought it was somebody else, when I turned around I thought somebody, it was one of his homies, and I didn't mean to shank you. Kind of weird, isn't it? But getting back to the barring churches here in Korea, let's dip into that because there's a story behind that. Lee says, and Lee is the president of Korea, says religious organizations that violate laws or the Constitution should be dissolved. This is some huge news. And this all stems, there's the president with his dyed hair. Doesn't he look good? It seems like all the politicians dye their hair. Comes out amid continued revelations about the Unification Church's alleged interference in political affairs. So they're like greasing the palms of politicians. And President Lee Jae-myung asserted that religious organizations should be dissolved if they engage in acts violating the Constitution and laws. And he wasn't specifically naming the Unification Church, but it is also known as the Family Federation of World Peace and Unification. It's a unification church. It's a cult. It's just all there is to it. It's a cult. But most churches are cults anyway. But this one is it's currently under investigation, spearheading the former First Lady for alleged corruption. And it's like a well. It goes deep, and it's getting deeper. So anyway, it goes through, and cabinet people or whatever got caught in where the church was spent money and gave money and watches and all kinds of stuff, which is against their thing. And the president's like, yeah, we should dissolve churches if they get caught violating the laws in the Constitution. So it is less a constitutional issue than an application of Article 38. If a religious organization engages in continuous, severe, unlawful conduct in an organized manner, dissolution becomes possible. So legally, it is possible for that to happen. And continuous, I don't know, what's your definition of continuous? Severe? Well, if you're polishing the palms of politicians and you're involved in corruption of the previous president and the president's wife, who was caught manipulating stock and a bunch of other things and receiving gifts that they weren't supposed to give, kind of like the United States. You can give politicians gifts, but it has to be within a certain amount, and if it goes over that amount, it's not allowed. So, yeah. But then crooked politicians do NGOs, and they filter money from government sources and taxpayers into their own pockets through a variety of means, via NGOs, non-government organizations, and yeah, we still have corrupt politicians. So anyway, it ends up that this whole thing is that the Unification Church is facing allegations of providing cash and valuables to lawmakers for the conservative side of the political parties here in Korea, and also for the Democratic or the liberal side here in Korea. So you got the left and the right here in Korea as well. But yeah, he's talking about, let's let's get rid of these churches, which is going to be huge because the more they dig, the more they find out about the Unification Church and have they bribed everybody on the right and left and everybody in between. So, yeah, it doesn't look good. It's quite the interesting thing. And they accepted cash. They accepted expensive watches. Again, all of these things are outside the bounds of what they can receive. Unification records from 2021 show possible 5 billion won earmarked for presidential election. And 5 billion won, 5,000,000, that's 5 million, then 000, divided by 1470, you're talking about, oh my gosh, $3.4 million. just on the presidential thing. So yeah, the Unification Church is they've been doing some dastardly stuff. Sultan says, indeed, Zombie Hunter, no country's perfect. Then again, Korea's pretty damn close. Just kidding. But yeah, the best place is where you feel at home. For me, it's right here. And I have to agree with Sultan. It's a really good place for me and the wife. We enjoy it. We're content, we're happy, the crime is low, expenses are low. Like I said, expenses are half of what we were paying in the United States. So, and I got to do some hobby stuff. I do miss my guns, though. I do miss my guns. And one of these days, I'm going to go to a firing range, a gun range here in Korea. But the problem is the gun ranges that I found are crazy. It's like, it's an indoor gun range, but you have your stall that you have a stall and then you have like a bench in front of you and then the gun sits there, but there's a wire cable going through the handguard of the gun. So you can just basically pick it up, shoot at a target and then put the gun down. That's all you can do. And somebody is watching you. They're like, okay, go slow. Don't, I mean, it is so static and so, really you just get to pull the trigger, bang, 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 and that's it. Can't do fast reloads. There's some places where you can't do, fast fire or, double taps or anything like that. There's definitely no shooting and moving like I used to do, that I love to do, steel shooting matches, competition shooting, hell, I'd go out and, shoot out of my vehicle and around my vehicle on a range and crawl in the dirt and have all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah, you can't do that here. So I just don't, as much as I would love to go shooting, I don't want to shoot like that because it would just piss me off. So, I don't know. Yeah. Let's see. Our Melon 327 says 3 mil sounds low compared to American standards. I know. Those are rookie numbers. They need to bump up those numbers. And if you got that reference, give yourselves a thumbs up. But yeah, it doesn't sound like much. But again, they're just in the initial stages of examining and investigating the Unification Church here in Korea, which has been rumored to have been corrupting politicians for a long time. So yeah, and the current president, he's kind of a lefty type of guy, but with this deal going on, he's ruffling some feathers, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. As an independent, I'm all for making sense. So, but the way that I feel about things here in Korea, since I'm on a visa, I'm kind of limited. I don't vote. I can't vote here yet. I'm not a permanent resident. Maybe that'll change in the near future. Well, a few years from now, maybe that'll change. I say near future. But yeah, it's things are different over here in Korea. And the corruption runs deep. So there's a lot more. This is just a little icing on the cake. This isn't deep into the mix. I have a feeling they're going to find so much corruption. It's just going to rock this place. And that's going to have a problem. That's going to cause problems for the stability of Korea as a country that is already having problems economically. The won rate, the won to US dollar to won rate is, like I said, about 1474, 73, something like that. And it's expected to go to 1500 this next year. So yeah, it's great for people that have US dollars, not so great for Koreans or people who get paid in Korean won. But yeah, it is. Cabinet ministers were named in this with the Unification Church and the whole 9 yards. It's getting deep. And they're just scratching the surface of this. So that's what we got going on there. But 3 million doesn't sound like much. When you're talking about, like, what was it? They threw, if I'm not mistaken, $1.5 billion to try to get Kamala Harris elected as president, and that didn't work. And I can't remember how much they did for Trump. It was like 127 million, or I can't remember. But the numbers are just, when you look at American politics and the greasing of palms and, all of that by lobbyists with politicians, 3.4 million is chicken. That's chump change. That's chicken feed. Let's continue on. Let's see what we got. The transgender college debacle thing. I never thought that I would see this here in Korea, and this is actually one of the things that I didn't think I'd ever see, but it actually almost a thing. So let's dive into that. Transgender student admitted to women's university decides to not enroll. Now, for those of you, I'm old. I'm 59. I am old school. And even though I'm an independent and you do what you want to do in the privacy of your own home, I don't care because it doesn't affect me. But there's something to be said. And if you want to dress up and pretend you're a woman, if you have that right to do that, then go ahead and do it. I don't really care. You could dress up and be a Superman, or Wonder Woman or a dog or a furry or whatever it is that you want to do. But just don't infringe upon my rights or the rights of other people. And that's where this whole trans thing becomes a problem, because traditionally here in Korea, we're talking about this women's college. The student cites fear is the main reason. Sukmyeong Yoja Daehakyo is the women's university, and prejudice finally broke the will of a transgender female who intended to study at an all-women's university. After undergoing gender reassignment surgery and gaining permission to change her legal gender from a South Korean court, a 22-year-old identified as K was accepted into the law department at Sukmyeong Women's University in the year 2020, for the year 2020. But on 7 February, K said she decided not to attend at all. I kept mulling it over all night and finally decided not to enroll. I have a number of reasons, but in the end, the biggest one is fear. Given the fear that my personal information would be leaked, that I'd be tracked down, I wasn't sure I could handle campus life. And this was a whole thing. This is a space for women, so stay out, wrote one student. There's no grounds for a transgender woman to claim she's a woman. Another post said if a transgender woman had just kept quiet in the first place, people wouldn't have made a fuss about her. Then there was also a bunch of comments about hate and prejudice against trans people or whatever. An attorney for whom Kay said she regarded as a role model spoke on the phone about the decision not to attend. We saw not only a simple rejection of transgender, but also feelings of hatred on campus, and I can't understand why the university didn't do anything about it. If the university had actively welcomed and accepted this student, I think that the people on campus would have felt more ashamed of their actions. Changing society from a non-mainstream point of view is the basic foundation and the central value of feminism. Depends on what your definition of feminism is, but it's a major misconception for statements opposing Kay's admission to claim the name feminism. People have the right to choose their own gender identity and no one can take it away from them, said this professor of sociology at Halem University. While Kay decided not to attend this women's university, given up on the dream of studying law, I'll be working on university applications with the goal of getting into law school. I hope our society can become one that can tolerate diverse values. Like I said, I'm old school. And to give you a little bit of background, When I joined the military back in the 80s, yes, I'm that old. I was 17. And at that time, the big thing was people that are gay or homosexuals. And under the don't ask, don't tell. In the military at that time, there were people that were gay. That's all there was to it. You had homosexuals, you had lesbians, you had all alternate lifestyle type of people. But if you did your job, we didn't care. Because in the words of my drill sergeant, it doesn't matter what race, color, creed, or sex you are, we are all green. And as long as you do your job, you work hard, you play hard, that is what, and you got the back of the person to your left and right, that is what it's all about. The problem that I see with this is that now you have somebody who's pretending to be somebody else, gender-wise, is going to a university that is meant for biologically female people. And so, there's that whole DNA thing, the hips and the pelvic tilt and being able to, have childbearing hips are very different from the hips of a man who's pretending to be a woman who doesn't have a uterus and who does have a prostate and will still need to get prostate exams after they've done their full transition surgery. DNA doesn't lie, folks. That's all I'm saying. And I just find it problematic of that we're trying to appease a very small minority, in this case, one person, and that what about all the women that go to a women's university because they want that safe place for them? But now that you have somebody, even though they went through reassignment surgery, they're still not a woman. I don't care if you cut the stem off the apple, it's still an apple. Okay, that just saying, you got a prostate, your DNA doesn't lie. Excuse me. It's a thing, maybe I'm just old school in that. Now here's the thing. Let me preface this by saying that if you want to pretend to be another gender, that's fine. I don't care. But don't force me to make concessions to call you a she when you're obviously a he. And as if that's some type of hate crime. It's just, and what I find interesting is that there's always this thing, and I saw it a lot in the prisons. There's a lot of transgender, and they make a big deal about, I'm transgender, I'm blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I don't really care what you are, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, whatever we say, inmate so-and-so, use their last name, inmate Rodriguez or whatever. I don't really care, okay? You're here to do a job. I don't care what you do in your off hours or how you identify. Let's just keep it simple. This is the work we have to do. This is it. And if you keep interrupting the work by hyper-focusing and telling me all this stuff about what you believe and think that you are and not doing your work, that's where the problem comes in. I don't know. It's just a thing. Let's see. We got some comments here. Zombie says, sorry, but you can't spit on a cupcake and call it icing. Oh, wow. Zombie says, people go on about trans rights, but what about women's rights too? They forget that, and I'm on the side of women's rights. Like I said, women go to a women's university to be safe. And having somebody that is not a biological woman, what about their feelings? They don't feel safe. So now we're gonna bend for one person rather than the majority and make everybody feel uncomfortable. I don't know. I'm kind of on that side. Let's see. Terry pops up and says there's a teacher in Ireland that refused to call a trans student by their preferred pronouns, was arrested and facing 4 years and 50,000 US in fines. I don't know. Sultan says, hey, Zombie Hunter, you're in good company. Here's another guy who ran out of hair before dye became an option. Oh, that's going back to the politicians, and politicians all dye their hair. They do it in the United States too. I haven't dyed mine. I'm just kind of thinning. I'm doing the thinning and a little bit of gray. Let's see. Mad Mick 28 says, thank you for making sense. Terry Zombie, the UK is screwed up. Zombie says, Australia is going down the same road and it's sad. Mad Mick says, Terry Enoch Burke, it's ridiculous they even froze his bank account. I'm not sure what that is, but doesn't sound good. Thailand's freezing a lot of bank accounts. Armmelon327, nothing off my back by respecting trans folks. Hope Korea learns to do the same in the future. And let me talk about that. Having worked in the military, been overseas, been to Thailand, ladyboys everywhere, the whole 9 yards. I have no intimate knowledge of ladyboys. Just put that out there, okay? I can respect anybody and everybody. I can respect somebody who's a Satanist, a Muslim, a Christian, or whatever, Unification Church, Moonies, the whole 9 yards. It doesn't matter. I don't care what color, race, or creed that you are. Hell, if you want to be a furry, if you want to, I've worked with all these people. And when I was in the military, and I've worked with them in the prison system, and some who were guards that were alternate lifestyle. And that's absolutely fine. I don't care. But when your rights infringe upon the rights of a ton of more people than you, I don't know if that's really a right. And again, it's kind of a thing where it's like, the women's university, it's a biologically woman's university. I don't think if you cut the stem off the apple, that you are considered a woman. It's just not biologically, DNA, the bone structure, the way the brain is, the whole 9 yards, everything screams male. You can dress up as much as you want, and I'll respect you for that. I've known people who were trans that worked for me in the prison. I had prison inmates who were trans who worked for me. But I made it clear from the get-go, it's like, hey, you can do what you want to do. You've chosen a lifestyle that obviously is very different than mine. I don't really care, okay? We're here to do a job. I'm going to respect you as a person, and we're going to roll that way. If you have any problems, come with me. I'll help you out as best I can, in work or life. I'll try to, do the best that I can to support you. But don't make it a thing and try to get extra privileges or make it a problem with a bunch of other people because you think that you're being, offended. Excuse me. So yeah, like I said, I'll respect anybody and everybody, but the problem I think is kind of like what somebody posted about this article. It said, well, hey, if they never made a big thing about this, I'm going to apply for a women's, university and blah, 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 and it becomes news. Why did you feel that you had to do that? Because if, like the person that posted said, hey, if you didn't make a big deal out of it, it probably wouldn't have been a big deal. And that's kind of a thing. I remember we had a staff member that one place where I worked who was trans, they didn't make it a big deal. They show up to work, do their job, boom, it was good to go. You kind of knew that the Adam's apple was huge. But it's a nice person, but they didn't make it like, you need to do this for me and this, and make it their whole identity is revolved around that one thing. That wasn't it. It's, hey, this is who I am, and it's like, okay, and I had some interesting discussions with this person after getting to know him a little bit. Actually, he said he was her, but at that time it was like, hey, I still referred to him as a male, and he didn't have a problem with it. But we had discussions and talked with this trans person, this guy who dressed up like a woman and thought he was a woman. And he said he felt more comfortable dressing up like a woman. And I'm like, okay, I get that, I guess. I feel comfortable dressing a certain way that I dress. And he said that, his whole thing was, I don't feel like a man. which I thought was interesting because, like, when I woke up this morning, I don't wake up and my eyes pop open and say, oh, I feel like a man. I am manly today. I mean, there's times when I do think I'm manly, but I don't go around my entire day thinking I'm a man. And so when I hear people that say, well, I don't feel like a man, what do you mean by that? I don't get that. That really wasn't a thing. It's not like I wake up and think, oh, I feel like a man today. Or I wake up and it's like, oh, I don't feel like a man today. Maybe I need to change my gender. No, it's just I wake up as a person. So again, that whole thing of feeling is so subjective. I just really don't get that. Let's get to some comments. Let's see what else we got here. Sultan says, I have no religious affiliation, but some churches here freak me out a bit. Feels borderline fundamentalist shit, if you ask me. Not good. I'm for some sane control. You're always going to find some crazy churches, and I've seen some crazy ones in the States. But I've also been friends and acquaintances with people that have the total opposite of what I believed at the time, and it's like they were mature and civil enough to be able to have that relationship with me, and it wasn't a problem, despite our obvious and glaring differences when it came to religion. But the people that don't, that's where the problem comes in. So, Corsair the Pirate says, hand pink waving, hey. Mad Mick 28 says, I'll call them whatever they want if they show me respect. It shouldn't be forced on anybody, though. Yeah. Also, don't like the idea of biological man dominating in physical sports against women. Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of a thing. I'm right there with you. I mean, if you look at the studies and you look at the science, men are always going to have more muscle mass than women. And you just need to look at some videos where, you know, the women boxer comes in, oh, I can beat anybody. And then the guy comes in and who's not even been in the sport as long as her or have many titles or anything, and just cleans her clock. That, you know, at MMA, they've done that as well. You know, guy can't make it in MMA as a man, but as soon as he goes trans and he fights against women, he goes to the top. Again, there's obvious, you know, it's unfair advantages. And again, I'm old school. If your DNA says that you're a woman, you're a woman. If you have a uterus, you're a woman. If you know what I'm saying? If your hips at the time can able to allow to dilate 10 centimeters to pass a baby, you're a woman. But guys don't do that. So again, you can cut the stem off an apple, but there's no way that you're a woman. It's just face it, biologically. I'm old school. But I'll respect whatever people want to do. But during my day of growing up, being in the military and all that stuff, especially with gays, homosexual, alternative lifestyles, whatever you want to call it, I remember when the gays used to do their thing, and when I was in the military, and it just sounds weird, doesn't it? Yeah, I don't know. But I had people work for me that had that alternative lifestyle. The majority of them, no problems whatsoever. They would bust their ass. Little pun intended. No, but they would work hard. They would do their job. They wouldn't make that a point of contention, and it wouldn't cause problems within our unit. Everybody knew, you know, what they were doing behind closed doors, or that was their lifestyle. But when I was in, that was my experience. Other people, I'm not saying this is across the board for the military. There's, you know, I've heard stories in the military where people were, you know, beaten up for having that type of lifestyle, which I think is totally wrong. But with that said, all the experience that I had in the military over 20 years, with 12 years overseas, I think, you know, the majority of them, it wasn't a problem. It was just like another day, you know, hey, we need to do this, we need to dig this foxhole or this fighting position or this or that or whatever, you know, doing PT, fine, no big deal. There was like one or two, I think there was like two during my entire career that were problematic about it. That because they had that lifestyle, that somehow they should be granted extra privilege, or they shouldn't have to work the same as everybody else does. And again, on the other side of the coin, I've had women that acted like, oh, I can't work, because I'm a woman. It's like, no, you need to grab that shovel and dig that fighting position. But I'm going to break a nail. Well, break it, cut it off, get back to work. That's. So I really dislike it when people use sexuality to get out of work. That's what pissed me off. Because now you're putting your work that you're supposed to do onto somebody else, and that's not fair. So it's your job. You signed up for the military. This is a task that you knew, and eventually you came to know this is what you need to do, but now you're saying you're not going to do it because you're a woman or because you're this or that or whatever. The fact is, it doesn't really matter. It's your job. And if you don't want to do it, then you shouldn't be in the military. That's all there is to it. Let's see. Corsair the Pirate says, I wake up and feel like a pirate. But of course. And I respect you for that. I wake up and I don't think I'm a man. I'm just thinking I need my latte. So that's what you end up doing is latte. But that's an interesting thing, though, is that I've seen a lot of interviews. I've read a lot of articles about this because it's just such an interesting topic of these people that don't feel like they're the gender that they have been assigned at birth. And the majority of it is all based on feelings. Well, I don't feel like I'm a woman. I don't feel like I'm a man. I feel like I would be better if I was this gender or that gender or whatever. But the thing is, it's like, that was never a thing back when I was growing up. It's like, and like I said, just based on my experience, I don't feel like I'm a man. I know I'm a man. Yep, I'm a man. Prostate, the whole 9 yards, the DNA. That's what I am. But my feelings are totally subjective. Now, the problem with feelings, it's a biochemical response. And if your brain and your biochemical response is not firing on all fours, can we trust those feelings? I don't know. It's, people with depression. There's a lot of people who have depression, anxiety, and a lot of other mental health issues that have some real bad problems because their brain isn't wired the way it should be, like normal people. So, again, basing things on feelings is very subjective. I find it very problematic because we're making these huge decisions to cater for a very small minority against people who are normally, like I said, the women's university thing. You see what I'm getting at? Now you're making a bunch of people uncomfortable because you're not a biological female and you're going to an all-female university, prison, work, whatever it is, spa, all women's spa. And then now the thing that really gets me is the people that, even if you've had that gender reassignment surgery, but it's even worse because if you don't go through that, the stem is still on the apple and you're going into women's locker rooms, whether it's in high school or spas or all women's spas or things like that, where female children, I don't care how you feel. You can feel like you're a woman all day long, but I don't know. It's just... let's see. Mad Mick 28 says, unfair, goes against feminism completely, in my opinion. Well, feminism is, that's the other interesting thing, is feminism used to be where women wanted to have equal rights as men. And they got the right to vote. They do all this stuff. You can join the military. They're not drafted, though. They don't have to sign up for the draft, so that's a little unequal. And women get 50% during the divorce, so that's not equal or more, plus, spousal support and, child support and all that stuff, that's not fair. Everything's all unfair until they have to pay their fair share. Let's just put it that way. But feminism used to be a thing of where women wanted to be equal with men. To be able to buy a house, to rent a property, to get loans and whatever it is, all of the things that men do, they wanted those equal rights. They have got them. It's a done deal. So the feminism that we have today is defined extremely different than that feminism of old of, not being looked at, we're not going to give you a loan to buy a house because you're a woman. Well, that's obviously wrong. There's ageism that pops into there as well. What about, your alternative lifestyle? Whoa, you believe in this as an alternative lifestyle? We're not going to give you a loan for a house. All of that has been done away with. Now it's all, you got a good credit score? Well, we'll give you a loan. That's what it comes down to. You have the means to pay for the property that you're going to buy? Yeah, here's a loan. And depending on your credit score, you can get some really great rates. So, yeah, I mean, there's that. It's just, I don't know. Sultan talks about Corsair the Pirate. Where's the rum? If you got that reference there, pretty good. Zombie Hunter says, people can be whatever they want to be, but don't bring me into your delusional world too. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of that thing, Mad Mick, do you think there's a lot of strong ideology or sensitive gender issues in South Korea? Just curious. This is a very good question. It's a very patriarchal society. In other words, the men are important. There was times in Korea where women were considered a lower class type of person, I guess you could say, where the man is the head, the women are beneath the men and so on and so forth. There was times in Korea where it was looked upon that if you had a daughter, it was frowned upon. There would actually be abortions if you found out that you were having a girl. And it even got to the point of when our daughter was born, when we went to the Korean hospital to get the ultrasound and to find out, they would not tell us the sex because that was the social norm of that. Well, if you found out that it's going to be a girl, you would get it aborted, and we don't want to participate in that. And it's just odd. It's really odd. I said, well, I'm an American citizen and married to my wife who's a Korean citizen. We want to know so we can tell our family members, do you buy blue or pink? That's basically all we want to know for gifts when the baby's born, for the baby shower. Nope, wouldn't do it. That has changed over time. And then there's also times in Korea that I remember where the police would raid clubs of people of alternative lifestyles and they would go to jail or prison. Yeah, it was, so yeah, if you had a gay club or bar or whatever, those places were raided and shut down because of that. So I'd say that's some pretty strong ideology, and they're pretty sensitive to that issue. But these days, it's come a long way, and it's not that big of a deal. They don't do that stuff anymore. So obviously they've accepted the fact that, yeah, you do whatever you want behind closed doors, whatever it is. We're not going to, make a big deal out of it. So it's not a big deal nowadays. And especially, same thing happens with interracial marriages. Back when I married my wife, when we got married, it was really frowned upon. If a Korean married a GI, it was kind of like, oh, she's kind of like around not good. It's like one step above a prostitute is what some people saw that as. And as unfortunate as it is, I can understand why. But, nowadays, now it's all the rage. Now they have TV shows, and now they have couples that, the man's a foreigner and the wife is Korean or vice versa, and they have TV shows, and it's mainstream. It's not a big deal anymore. And now we're getting TV shows where, For example, there's a singing competition where you have Korean singers and then you have singers from Japan, and they battle against each other in songs, and kind of a singing competition thing. I watch about 5 minutes and I'm done. But there's people there who are obviously alternative lifestyle people from Japan and or Korea, and it's just like, it's not a big deal anymore. So Korea's come a long way, but for the majority of people, it's more traditional. Now, it should be said that while it is still more traditional in Korea, we don't have a large birth rate here in Korea because that tradition of being married, having a job, having a house, the wife, and the 2.5 kids and a dog isn't really a thing anymore. And so Koreans are like, marriage has gone down. Premarital sex is definitely a thing. And then you got people that just don't even want to get married. They just play the field and have fun and don't have kids at all because why? They don't want to be tied down. So there's a lot of norms that are changing here in Korea, same as anywhere else. But that's going to have some repercussions. There's going to be some ripples like we see here in Korea and Japan. There's not enough families. There are not enough babies being born to keep the Korean society alive, or Japan alive for that matter. Going on where they are, it seems like, hey, guess what? Eventually, Korea and Japan are going to be gone because they're not having enough children of those races to keep that race alive. So eventually it'll go away. Mad Mick says, South Korea seems so nice, kind of jelly. It is nice. I mean, the people are great. Like I said, I've never felt unsafe here. I respect the Korean people. I've always been treated with respect. And once or twice, there's some bad apples. But for the majority, it's great. But then there's also the point that I'm retired. And, the majority of people in Korea are still working, so there's that. And we don't hang around a lot of retired Korean people. It's just not something we do. But yeah, it's great. We like it. We enjoy it. Mad Mick says, I read something that they're trying to inspire younger people to date more in South Korea. Oh, yes. Yes. And they're giving monetary benefits to people who get married and have children, and to pay for tuition. Matter of fact, one of my wife's friends, that the Korean government paid for their kids' college tuition. So that's some of the benefits. And they'll get some tax benefits, they actually get money. So they're encouraging young Koreans to get married and have kids. And so there's a big push for that, which there has been a good response, but not enough to keep the Korean race going. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. Hey, we got George popped in. George says howdy. Mad Mick says, I have a sense of paranoia where I live. Luckily, I work on a military base, so I just feel fine there. I get you. Yep. I'm always kind of paranoid anyway. Checking the doors and where I sit in a restaurant, whether it's in a Korean restaurant or anywhere else, I always got to be able to see who's coming in. I don't have my back to the door or to the crowds. My wife has finally gotten used to that over the time. But yeah, it is, and we feel at home on the military base. It's weird because even though my wife was born and raised in Korea, we got married and the majority of our time was away from Korea. And now, so she's westernized. But when we're in the United States, we don't feel like we fit 100% in the States. And then now that we're in Korea, we still don't feel like we fit 100%. So my wife doesn't even feel like she fits 100% in Korea. It's nice that, there's more Korean people around. I lose her in a crowd every once in a while. It's so many smaller people with dark hair and, who's my wife? There's that goes on. But when we're on the military base, that's where we feel the most comfortable because there's such a wide diversity of people. There's Korean Americans, there's all kinds of people, and they're all wearing green. And that's kind of how we grew up. And as a husband and wife, our life revolved around the military. So that's where we feel the most comfortable with. Yeah. He says, I'm actually chatting from base, supposed to be working here. Don't tell anybody. Everybody else keep the secret. We don't want to get Mick in trouble. But you do have that down. You're on a break. You're on a break. So yeah, the whole that whole thing with the transgender. I think locker rooms and bathrooms and stuff like that all should be biologically. You should be of that biological sex to be able to use those. The other interesting thing that I find, it's just odd that it's always the men who are pretending to be women that want to get into the women's locker room, spas, stuff like that. But you never see the women trying to be men, trying to force their way into male locker rooms, bathrooms, so on and so forth. And I've actually talked to a couple of people who are women who are transitioning over to men. They were like, yeah, I use the women's bathroom because I'm biologically a woman. And they feel safer. That's all I'm going to say. We'll just throw that out there. George says, one problem, and it is a problem in the U.S., even if people start having kids, we won't feel the effects for 20 plus years. Yeah, Korea's going to have that problem. It already has that problem as a super age society. And Japan's in the same boat. And I think it's their prime minister that said, you know what, we're just let nature run its course. Japan will eventually not be a thing. Same with Korea. Same with other countries as well. And what I don't like is this thing about forced diversity to help keep a country going. I don't, that's just such an odd thing, I don't know. It's that whole forced diversity, forced immigration thing. Excuse me, I really just don't get it. It's that's a whole nother video. Okay, so since we're talking about immigrants, this is kind of interesting. Here in Korea, there's been some immigration stuff. Immigration has been cracking down on some of the gray areas of immigration. The visa runs where you come on a tourist visa for 60 or 90 days, and then you go to another country for a day, you come back, you get another 60 or 90 days, whatever it is, to not be a tourist, but to try to stay in Korea because you can't get a visa. In other words, you're abusing the system. Korea is cracking down on some of that stuff, along with many other countries like Thailand, the Philippines, so on and so forth. A lot of these other countries are cracking down on these loopholes, these gray areas. So George says we're going to have to tough it out for a while. Yeah, tough it out. That's all you can do. Sultan says, honestly, this whole thing of so-called equality and people feeling this or that has been around way before the trans topic blew up. Was that last little bit? What's with everyone claiming God told them this or that? I totally agree with you. As soon as I hear somebody say, well, God told me, and it's like, yeah, we're not going to talk anymore. God told me, one of the ones that I heard was God told me to marry this girl. And it's like the girl didn't want to get married and God didn't tell her, but he told the guy. And so somehow that's supposed to make it, I don't get that. Whenever somebody leads with, well, God told me, and it's like, oh, it's game on. Let's get into this because you don't know what you believe. And Sultan says, please keep your own delusions to yourself. Yes. And who cares? Yeah, I don't really care if God told you, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. I'm pretty much guaranteed. So, but back to the immigration thing. Here in Korea, they're cracking down on the immigration. We've got that going on. And people that are overstaying visas or not having visas at all, as with other countries, are cracking down on this. But we had an interesting situation and a sad bit of information that we're going to take a look at here. This talks about a Vietnamese graduate's death renews scrutiny of Korea's visa rules. Pay attention to how this is worded. So there it is. This guy holds up a portrait of his daughter during a protest in front of the presidential office in central Seoul. Apparently there was a immigration raid for people, and she ended up passing away. Vietnamese woman who passed away following an immigration raid at a factory in South Korea has become the focus of growing calls to loosen the country's restrictive work visa rules for international graduates. Keep that in mind, because we're going to come back around to that. She was found dead in the yard of a car parts factory in Daegu on October 28th after falling from a building while hiding during a workplace crackdown by immigration authorities. Her death has intensified scrutiny of visa regulations that critics say leave international students with few legal options to support themselves after graduation. So what you're telling me is that if you come to Korea on an educational visa, you should automatically be given the right to stay in Korea after you graduate? We'll see how that pans out. Caught between two visas, yeah. She had been staying on Korea on a D10 job-seeking visa after graduating, so she put in for the visa to look for a job. The visa allows limited job search activity, but generally prohibits manual labor, including factory work. Yeah, because you are seeking a job. It is not an employment visa. Foreign graduates are expected to secure employment, professional employment with an E7 visa, a threshold that many struggle to meet. Well, yeah, there's standards. Mourning her death, which is terrible. Labor activists and family members have launched protests criticizing a system that say leaves international graduates with little means to earn a living legally. She died, but her death will not be in vain. I want the government to investigate the case thoroughly and hope foreign students and immigrants will not face disadvantages related to their visas. The Ministry of Justice, which oversees policy, said it was not responsible for her death, arguing the incident occurred after the raid had ended. Another interesting little fact that I've seen in other articles as well. Protesters demand the release of surveillance footage to allow for clear investigation. Of course, you have the protests, and again, it's a shame that she ended up passing away. Limited access to E7 visas. D10 job-seeking visa permits only limited forms of part-time work in narrowly defined professional fields and only on an exceptional basis. So really what this kind of comes down to is that you have, and it's almost the same with a lot of other countries. If you come to a country, and Korea is one of them, if you come here on an educational visa, you're allowed to stay on and in Korea as long as you're getting an education and going to school. When you graduate, there's a little bit of time that you have, and you can put in for this D10 visa that allows you for some part-time work, allow you to try to get full-time employment. Okay, is it narrowly defined? Well, yeah. It is. And for factory work, it's one of those things. I mean, why? I'm not sure. I couldn't find out that information. But for getting a job, you have to put in another visa for employment, an e-visa. It's an employment visa. The majority of countries around the world have different visas for employment and education. And just because you got an educational visa does not grant you the right to stay in that country. In a lot of countries, they don't have a transitional visa that permits you to have part-time work to find and put in for full-time employment. Many countries just have the educational visa and then they have an employment visa. And if you're graduated, guess what? You need to put in for the employment visa. In other words, you have to get that job, get sponsored by an employer, have the letters, all of that stuff, and then you can get that employment visa. Most countries don't have transitional visas like Korea does. So this whole thing about saying, oh, it's a travesty. Well, it's a travesty that the lady died. I mean, it's totally uncalled for. But the fact that is there, just because you get an educational visa and you go to school and you graduate, that doesn't guarantee you to stay in that country, in the majority of the countries. I had an interesting discussion online with an individual who was ranting and raving about this, and it's like, this is a travesty of justice and blah, blah, blah. Well, I looked up that person's Facebook page. They came from Liberia, and guess what? Liberia has an education visa and they have a work visa. They don't even have a transitional visa to look for employment where you can work part-time. So it's like, hey, you do know that in your own country, you only have those two visas, and they don't even have a transitional visa at all in Liberia. And the person got really mad at me and that's not true. And so I showed him the information, and it was like, yeah, it was just kind of odd. Let's see. Hey, we got Ferithus. Hey, good morning. Long time no see. I know. I've been reluctant in my streaming. I had a few bad brain days and some appointments. Excuse me. Sultan says, an old friend of mine, an American, incidentally, used to do visa runs between Hong Kong and Korea. Not you, Sparky. Recently, he was denied entry on Korea on one of those runs. Yeah, that is happening. And I got a story about that too. They're interesting. Hack 37. Hey, welcome. People just don't want to leave the countries providing them education. It is unfortunate that most of the immigrants are coming without wanting to go back and improve their home country. That's true. That is true. I mean, I'm all for education. And if you can apply for a visa and go to another country to get a better education, I would think that going back to your home country and improving that would be a thing. It's not required, but you think that is what would happen. But my thing is, just because you got an education in a foreign country doesn't give you the right to stay in that country. Like I said, the majority of countries have work and educational visas. They're two entirely different things, and not a lot of countries have these in-between visas that allow you to do some work while you're looking for full-time employment. So this whole thing of saying that, this claim that Korea is, the visa system's all screwed up, actually it's a lot better than most. Now, could it be improved upon? I think so. Nothing is perfect. And I think, why is factory work not allowed by people who have graduated under that D10 visa? I don't know. I can't find out information on that. Here's some interesting information. So let's go back to this. In 2023, only 10% of foreign bachelor degree holders and 36.3% of doctorate graduates from Korean universities who are working in the country had obtained an E7 visa, according to that Korean education. A March survey found that international students cited a shortage of E7 eligible positions and visas' narrow job classifications as key reasons for the low uptake. So yeah, kind of like what we were talking about. Is there room for improvement? Yes, there absolutely is. But immigrants' rights groups accuse the government of disregarding the prospects of foreign students' employment, both during their studies and after graduation. Here's the thing. That's up to the government. That's up to the country. Just because you went and got a degree doesn't guarantee you employment. Hello? They point to the government's target of attracting 300,000 international students by 2027, arguing that while intake has expanded to support universities facing this demographic decline, legal employment pathways have failed to keep pace. As a result, graduates are forced to compete for a limited pool of eligible jobs. Yeah. Forced to compete for eligible jobs. It's almost like they want a very outstanding person who meets all the requirements, somebody who's a blue flamer, somebody who is at the cream of the crop, that they get the available jobs. What's wrong with that? Again, this whole thing, I'm all for immigration. Hell, my family came from Europe to the United States. They crossed over on the boat, the whole 9 yards. I mean, been there, done that. My wife became an American citizen. She was a Korean citizen. She became an American citizen. She did all that. So as long as you do it legally, but this whole thing of saying, if you want X amount of people to come to your Korean universities, but you don't want to give them all jobs, that's totally fine. Just because somebody comes to Korea and gets an education does not guarantee them a job in that country. I don't know where they came up with this idea of saying, well, I went to college here, so you better have a job for me. It's against immigrants' rights or whatever. It's wrong. No, it's not. There's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, you know what? You'd have 1 million people come and get an education in your country. But if the country says these are the high standards that we have, and if you can't meet those high standards for employment, guess what? You don't get a job. You're not going to get the visa. There's nothing wrong with that. I think this mediocrity of saying just because you got an education means you should be able to get a job doesn't hold water. It is you're settling for mediocre. You're settling for less. And I don't think that's a good thing. Because if you don't have high standards, you're going to get a substandard employee, which means substandard work, which means substandard results. There's absolutely nothing wrong with wanting the best for your company or your country. Get me all riled up. Let's see. We catch up on some. Veritas pops up and says, in the U.S., it specifically says that the student J visas that they are not. Immigration, let's get back in. Sorry about that. Immigration visas, and that while under them, you cannot look for avenues to immigrate to the U.S., so no applying for jobs. So Korea allows for that transitional visa for people who have got their education, they graduated, they can work in certain areas while they're looking for full-time employment. And again, you have to be sponsored, the whole 9 yards. If you look at immigration rules and laws for gaining employment in another country, there's a lot of standards that you have to meet and so on and so forth. Korea is no different in that aspect. And let's face it, not everybody is going to get a job. Not everybody is going to meet those standards. It's just the way life is. And this whole thing of saying, it has to be fair for everybody, what you're really saying is we need to lower our standards. I don't think a country or a company should have to go through that. You can have high standards. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And the fact that Korea does have an educational visa and a separate work visa, and they have a transitional visa when most other countries don't, I don't know. I think Korea's on the right track. Now, do they need to expand some of the work opportunities that people do on that D10 visa? Absolutely. Like I said, I don't understand why factory work is verboten. Let's see. Let's get back to the said article. Where's my thing? Oh, there we go. Many who wish to remain in Korea ultimately take factory or manual labor jobs despite the risk of visa violations or deportations, the group said. Hello, I'm on a visa, and you know what? There are things that if I violate the conditions and the terms of my visa, I can be deported. I cannot work in Korea for a Korean employer. I would lose my visa. There's nothing wrong with that. And I'm an immigrant. She may have feared deportation or being unable to attend graduate school while preparing to continue her studies in Korea. She may have feared deportation. They don't even know. But the fact is that the current laws on the books talk about, and they say, well, guess what? it's against the law to do A, B, and C. And you would I'm in fear of being deported if I broke A, B, C, and D and whatever the conditions of my visa are. It's a thing. Don't get in trouble. Don't work. Don't do this. Don't do that. I am in fear of deportation, but it doesn't affect me because I don't do those things, so I don't have that fear because I live in accordance with the laws and the visa that I hold. It's simple. And it says, she may have feared deportation or being unable to attend graduate school. If you're unable to attend graduate school, that means that you didn't meet the standards of that university, and that's not the country's problem. Not everybody is going to meet the standards. It's not demeaning her as a person or anybody else. It's just a fact of life. If there's people that get an education and have a degree that they're dumb as a bag of hammers, and they will not be able to get a higher level education. So go back to your own country and get a higher level education, or go to the United States, or go to some other, it's just, I don't like this thing where they say, oh, it's unfair and blah, blah, blah. And when you start seeing these words of she may have felt this, or she may have been unable to attend graduate school, now they're just pulling stuff out of the air of saying, she might have done this, she may have felt this way. Well, we don't know. But why are you bringing that into the situation when there's no proof of that? Now, obviously, if the factory was being raided, she went and hid somewhere because of why? Because it violated her visa? So obviously she knew the rules and the laws, and she went and hid somewhere. And then after the raid was over, she fell and passed away, which is horrible. That is terrible. It's tragic. My heart goes out to her family. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want my daughter to pass away. But then again, my daughter wouldn't be in that situation. Again, it's a horrible thing, but the thing is, it's just like, it's almost like these people are like, we can't have rules and laws anymore. Well, your own country has rules and laws. Interesting. And then they said a flawed visa policy that blocks people from earning a living even when they face immediate hardship contributed to this tragedy. If her death is treated as an individual mistake, similar incidents could happen again. And again, they're all talking about this thing where it's like, you're allowed to work. You have this transitional visa that you can apply for that isn't really that hard to get, but it's limited in some of the jobs that you can do. Okay, I get that. But this whole thing of saying, it's a flawed system. It's immediate hardship. Well, again, there's no guarantee that you're allowed. And again, like that person from Liberia that I was talking with, they don't even have a transitional visa that allows you to work in any way, shape, or form. So, I don't know, maybe expand the job opportunities that people can do. Let them do manual labor. Let them do, factory work. But the problem is with factory work and manual labor, that is a full-time job. That's where the rub comes in. So now instead of being, I've graduated, I'm going to apply for a D10 visa that allows me part-time work as I go and try to secure employment and get sponsored by a company as a foreigner for a work visa. Now what they end up doing is, I got my education, so now I'm going to go work in a factory or in a labor position that is a full-time job. I don't know if you know this, but factory jobs are full-time positions. It's not like you can say, I just want to work part-time. That's not really a thing here in Korea. So again, there's just things that don't make sense in this article. She's working at a factory, but factories do mostly full-time employment. But she's still looking for a job, but it's full-time work. I don't know. It just doesn't sound good. Okay, let's get to some comments. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Hack 37 says, evening from Budapest. Wow. Got some people that are way out there. Budapest. Interesting. George says, I always thought the goal was to learn a skill abroad and bring that skill back to improve your prospects back home. That's kind of a thing. But then there's also people that will, hey, I want to get an education. I want to stay in that country, which is absolutely fine if you meet the visa requirements. And the fact that Korea does have a transitional visa for graduates that can work part-time jobs to obtain, hopefully full-time employment, that's a thing and most countries don't have. You don't hear about that. Look at these other countries. Hack says, it's a basic logic at this point. I feel like Steve is definitely not supportive of DEI measures. I was in the military. You talk about diversity. We had everybody. I got a cramp. Oh my gosh! Seriously. Did you ever? Oh, good Lord! Oh, that is cramping up. I need potassium. Oh man. This all knotted up. My calf is just. Ooh, seriously. Oh, please stop. Oh. Holy crow. Oh. I gotta put my foot up. Oh man, I haven't had. Oh man, talk about a Charlie horse. Good Lord. Oh. That was one of those just like, and it's still hard. Oh wow. Geez, sorry about that. Maybe a latte will make it better. Man, that still hurts. Let's get back to it. Ooh. Oh man, good Lord. Whew. Sorry about that. That I do. Back to where I don't support DEI. The military is probably the most diverse place I have ever been, and working in prisons, that's another DEI place that is just filled to the brim with DEI. A lot of diversity and equity. Everybody should be treated the same according to law. And inclusion, I think everybody should be included in following the laws of the country that they live in. I'm totally supportive of DEI. Let's see. Hack also says the main reason they are doing this BS is driven by higher wages in Korea, even if illegally, than staying in communist Vietnam or whatever places they're from, sadly. Interesting thing. Kind of an interesting side note. We went to Vietnam and I had gotten into a discussion with somebody on social media and stuff about how everything needs to be free. Everything is free under communist countries. And it's like, dude, I just got back from... Now, of course, this is an American who's living in their mom's basement. I swear to God, it's absolutely true. Living in their mom's basement, saying that the government should be communist and that the government has the sole means of housing and food and all that would be free under a communist country. And I'm like, no, that's not how that works. I just got back from Vietnam, and guess what? People need to work. They all have jobs, there's businesses, the whole 9 yards. You'd be surprised at how capitalistic Vietnam is. And it's not just free shit. So, yeah. Yeah, but there's something that Hack ends up saying of talking about, yeah, there is higher wages here in Korea compared to places like Vietnam, Indonesia, some places, Sri Lanka, some of these third world countries where people do and immigrants do come to Korea to get better paychecks because they don't get paid as much as they get paid more here in Korea than they do in their home country. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're allowed to do that legally and work in another country and make more money, send that money home or whatever you want to do, if it's legal, I'm fine with it. Sultan says, actually, for many Asians, it's often the other way around. Education is just a means to an end and the end of immigrating to a better, richer, or more powerful country. There's that point, too. Yep. I immigrated to Korea. So, yes, Hack says, yep, spot on. Mad Mick says, it's very sad. I'm just not understanding why she was so fearful that she risked her life. Well, I can tell you this right now is that she knew the laws and the rules governing her visa and the things that she should or should not do. When I got my visa, when my wife got her visa, we were told these are the things that you can do, these are the things that you can't do. Otherwise, your visa will be in jeopardy. So she knew. But the thing is that the factory work is an easy, and manual labor jobs are easier jobs to get here in Korea. But the fact that her D10 visa only allows for certain part-time employment when factory work is full-time, yeah, she knew. She knew. But the fact that she was hiding, obviously she knew. If she got caught, she would be deported because that's the rules. That's the laws. I don't know. Let's see what else. Hack says it's not like they would put her in jail or torture her for some super strict country, like some super strict countries. They would put her towards her next available flight, and that's it. And even then, I mean, there's circumstances that she might have been able to stay. I don't know. It's in some cases it's better to ask permission. Again, get an exception beforehand than doing what happened there. Terry says, I know a guy I know in Thailand is leaving for 2 months because his tourist visa is expiring. He'll come back and get 60 days. Then he has to go back to the U.S. and reapply for another visa. Yeah, and I recently, there was a guy, a lawyer who lives in Thailand. I forget his name, kind of an older gentleman. But he was talking about how the Thai government is putting an end, or they're tightening down on immigration and the gray areas of doing border runs. And so now, supposedly the rumor is 2 border runs and you're done. They've had people that were turned away. And there's actually been people in Korea that I've saw online that did the visa runs, and we'll talk about another person a little bit after this, twice, and then they weren't allowed entry into Korea. So yeah, Terry says that's part of the new visa law. Yeah, they're in Thailand's getting crazy on that. Let's see. Zombie says, I don't want DEI pilots when I'm flying a commercial airline, or a DEI surgeon. I don't know. Pilots, I don't fly that much. But surgeon, could you imagine that? I don't care. I want the best person for the job. And what I'm kind of seeing here, I'm all for diversity. I'm all for equity. I'm all for inclusion, of including everybody, as long as you meet the standards on a meritocracy. But when you start lowering the standards to get that diversity, that's where the problem comes in. That's what Zombie's talking about there. What is a DEI pilot? That is a pilot, I'm assuming, that is hired that doesn't meet the standards, so that way they can meet some level of diversity. So if you lower the standards for pilots so you could attain a certain diversity of certain races, that can be problematic. I don't know. Zombie says, come on, walk that shit off. Talking about that. Yeah, it was a bad cramp. I haven't had one. I need to eat some more potassium. Sultan, talking about that, Sultan says, drink more water with electrolytes. Coffee can actually make it worse. Yeah, but coffee is life. Ferrithus says, we got a lot of comments. Communism and socialism is just Fox News talking point at this point. Anything that is pro-consumer is socialism and communism. Could be. I don't know. I haven't watched Fox News in a long time. Hey, sweetie.
Hi.
I'm making a video.
Okay.
Just to let you know. Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Good. Sultan says, to me, all this DEI and so-called leftist movements are simply reactionary swing to one end of the pendulum. The same thing is happening to the right as well. In religion, we call this, and then Sultan says, to me, we call this fundamentalism, but in essence, it's the same phenomenon. Just my 2 cents. Hack 37 says meritocracy is the only way. Yeah, I mean, and I've seen kind of like this DEI before it really became DEI, of where we need people, so we're going to lower the standards. And then they're surprised that people don't meet the standards, or those people that they hired because of the lower standards do not perform as well as other people who did meet the standards. Yeah, it's just a thing. It's just common sense. It's how the world works. It's so, just hiring somebody based upon a certain thing when that thing has nothing to do with their job, and then they show that they can't meet the requirements for the job, but you're hiring the person because of that thing that the company wants to attain that has nothing to do with the job, that becomes a problem. So again, I'm kind of old school. I'm of the fact where it ends up, you know what, get the best person for the job. My time in the military didn't matter. Again, red, yellow, black, white, green, purple, it didn't matter what you were. If you were the best person and you met the standards, you got promoted. All that other stuff wasn't a thing for the most part. Okay, there's always going to be problematic and the good old boy system to some degree here and there. But I saw more problems in the civilian world than I did during my time in the military. So let's just leave it at that. So yeah, I mean, I'm all for a diverse workforce, and it shouldn't be excluded as saying, hey, we're going to exclude you because you're of this race, but you meet all the standards, so we're not going to hire you. That's as wrong as the day is long. As long as you meet the standards, doesn't matter who you are. Let's see, Ferrithus says, DEI was heavily enforced where I work. Every training on that said DEI means you need to advertise your job everywhere and then hire the best qualified candidate. It literally, what do you think? Pop back up there. It literally just about visibility. Well, yeah, and I'm totally for that. I mean, you can advertise anywhere you want. And if you want to advertise in an untapped market where you haven't advertised before, then go for it. As long as you meet the standard, then I'm all for that. You can advertise everywhere, meet the standards and get the job. And if you have a hard time hiring people, try advertising for another group of people or somewhere else or whatever it is. I'm all for that. I don't really see that as being DEI, especially the problematic DEI. I think there's 2 different veins of that. I think there's the one that Ferrithus is talking about, which, there's nothing wrong with that. And then there's the DEI of saying we're going to hire a person solely based on their race or solely based on their alternative lifestyle, where suddenly the standards are lowered or ignored. That's where the problems come in. It's kind of like in corrections. When I worked in corrections, you had females that they got rid of the 170-pound body drag. They got rid of that as a requirement because most women couldn't do that. But if you have to evacuate people, if you have to pull your partner out of a riot or inmates out of a riot or drag them to safety or whatever it is, you need to be able to do that. But if you can't do that as an individual, I don't know. But The Department of Corrections, okay, well, we're just not going to do that anymore. Then the Department of Corrections even went the other way around to where I worked anyway. They used to have a physical fitness test, and then they said, hey, we're having problems. We're going to get rid of that. And then we got bigger and bigger and bigger and fatter correctional officers and people that couldn't jog 20 feet to save their lives. So as far as reacting and getting to a situation where they needed to run, sprint, or even just jog or walk fast, these fat bodies wouldn't be able to do that, and that would lead to the death or somebody getting hurt or not being hurt, being hurt when they could have gotten there quickly. There's people that I know that were correctional officers that were over 400 pounds that were winded by walking 20 feet. And these people are supposed to be first responders to fights and altercations. And if another correctional officer is getting beat up, do you want some 400 pound person that cannot walk 20 steps without stopping? You really want them supporting you? No, I want somebody that is able to do the job. So don't get me started. Get me all riled up. That's what it is. Let's see what else we got. Mad Nick says, picking somebody based on qualifications and experience is much less racist, sexist than any ist they like to use. Best person for the job, forget the other stuff. Yeah. There's a thing in the Army where they were talking about for promotions for the senior level NCOs, non-commissioned officers, that they black out the names and they just look at the qualifications. So black out the race, black out the names, and just look at the qualifications and hire the best person for the job. There's that. Zombie says, I'm the same. I don't care who they hire as long as they're the best of the best. Yeah. And willing to learn. Yeah. Ferrithus pops up and says, I've seen lots of people just being hired for who they were or who they know, that nepotism thing, yeah. All places in construction, most white male, get back up there, conservative, anything but DEI. Wow, I've never seen that. Never worked construction. But yeah, I have seen it where people were hired just because of who they were or who, they were related to. We've all seen that happen. Thankfully, that is going away over time. Terry pops up and says, I retired 2 months early because the guy hired as my new boss knew nothing about my job but was trying to tell me how to do my job. He was a DEI hire. That's why I retired from the military. I had people telling me how to do my job that knew nothing about my job. And it just, they were in charge. And it's like, I want you to do A, B, and C. And it's like, well, we don't have the equipment to do A, B, or C. And it's like, well, get the equipment. And it's like, we aren't authorized that equipment, so I can't get it. Well, you're not doing your job. No, you need to put in the authorization to get the equipment, then I'll make it happen. But suddenly I'm the bad guy. And it's like, no, you get the equipment and we'll train on it. Guarantee you, I will make you a success. But I hated people that didn't know how to do my job, didn't know anything about my job, trying to tell me how to do my job. It was funny because when I worked in Department of Corrections, I worked in security electronics, with fiber optic. I worked with computers. I worked with landlines. I worked with PTZ cameras and control panels and keeping doors locked and inmates in and stun fences stunning, the whole 9 yards. And I had people trying to tell me how to do my job that didn't even know how to use a multimeter to measure resistance. And it's like, this is all wrong. This is wrong. You need to do this. And it's like, that's not how electronics works. Here's a multimeter. Here's this, and the signal over distance is degraded to the point that it's not usable, so that's why you need to have more equipment. And they're like, no, we don't have money for more equipment. Well, then you can't do the job. That's all I'm telling you. There are physical limitations in this world that we have to follow. No. How do you argue with people? How do you argue with stupid people like that? I just don't get it. But yeah, that's kind of a reason. Sultan says, it's like we all need some ism or oology, whatever you call it, to keep our eyes off the real issues. And usually the real issue is much closer to home. That's good. Hold on a second. Wife's on the phone. I don't want to interrupt her with my ranting and my morning coffee. But yeah, I get it. When you focus too much on an ism or an oology, and you make that the thing, then you're missing other things. It's kind of like you're focused too much on a dot and you're missing the paragraph. I don't know. Zombie says, you can never win against stupid people. Oh, yes, you can. And the problem is when you've got a lot of stupid people, it's harder to win. But, yeah, crazy. Stupid people. And I know, because I have done some severely stupid things in my time. But thankfully, I had people that would beat me about the head and shoulders to get rid of that stupidity and to educate me and to use some common sense, or at least try to attain some through education and critical thinking and all that stuff. And just, work hard, play hard, and just run with it. Have a good life. Be a decent person. But corrections was the big one. That was the big one. Mad Mick says, sounds like you guys know what I'm going through. My own manager thinks materials and supplies just magically appear out of nowhere because he's never done my job. Oh, yeah. Been there, done that. It is just like we had. Oh, you want to hear a good story? So the Department of Corrections. I'm doing security, electronics, the whole 9 yards. And so this person who's never worked in electronics, their electronics experience is plugging in a blender or a microwave. That is all that they've ever done electronically, and press the on-off switch. That is all that they have ever done. That they decided that, you know what, we're going to buy equipment now, and then 2, 3, or 4 years down the road, we'll use that equipment, but because we bought it now, it's lower price now than if we wait 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road. That same equipment will be more expensive. And so, that's a great way that we can spend money. So, we're going to buy all these cameras, we're going to buy all this equipment, and we'll get a bunch of it now because we can get some money. And then 3, 4 years down the road, we'll have cheaper equipment, and I'll look like the hero. And it's like, Sir, this is a major that we're talking about. And it's like the guy who was in line to be an associate warden. And it's like, okay, sir, I understand. Buying things now is probably going to be less expensive than in the future. The problem is that the equipment that we buy have warranties. And those warranties are not 3, 4, or 5 year warranties. Like for cameras, you have a 6-month warranty, sometimes 4 months. So with that being said, if you buy a buttload of cameras now and you wait 7 months or even just a year down the road, any cameras that are defective or found to be defective, like dead on arrival or crap out within the first couple of months, the first 6 months, you will not be able to return those to get free replacements. Said major, that's not going to happen. Why didn't you tell me that? That would never happen. It never happened that you would get industrial grade equipment would be dead on arrival, or that you would have problems with equipment and within the warranty period that we never have any returns. No. And I was like, okay, this is monumentally stupid. We're in this big meeting. We have the warden. We have this guy, the major. We have a security captain. We have a security major. We have the maintenance majors there. You have me there as electronics technician. And it's like, okay. And we all talk as subject matter experts, except for the warden and this major person who are not experts on anything. Except for prison operations. They're pretty good at that. But even then, it was like, there was still some common sense went out the window with that stuff. So, here it gets to the place of where it's like, bam, we got to talk about this. Okay, Sultan says we're going to jump in here real quick. Time to head to cafe to work. Good chat, everyone. Thanks always. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. I appreciate that. Yeah. That'd be good to try to maybe eventually go to a cafe where he's at. I'd like to try their coffee. Nedventive, hey, pops in and says, stupid is as stupid does, and stupid does a lot at times. So, yeah. So it's a good one. Just like everybody else. He's a good egg. So anyway, back to the situation of this major telling me we're going to buy all this equipment now and then we'll use it 3, 4, 5 years down the road. It's like, no, don't do that. That's bad. Then my boss said the exact same thing because my boss was off and that's why I was in the meeting. So when my boss gets back, he's like, what stupid ass shit is this? And I'm like, hey, I told him it was stupid ass shit. And he's like, no, that'll never happen. And it's like, come on, let's get the numbers and we'll show him. So my boss and I, we go through our acquisitions for all the past projects that we have done and showed, because we keep track of this stuff, was here's X amount of cameras that we bought over a certain time period for each project. And here's how many were dead on arrival. Here's how many that broke that we were able to get replaced within that warranty period of 6 months. Some of them had a year, some equipment, different equipment had different warranties. But even if the equipment worked but later crapped out, we were able to get a free replacement. So we had all the numbers, we had all the percentages, and we broke it down into this easily understandable chart. We dumbed it down as much as we could, showing a percentage that if you buy X amount of cameras, this is the percentage of cameras that are going to be dead on arrival and or will break. So that's why we have an additional purchase of X amount of cameras to cover those, and it's free replacements. You know, it's built-in redundancy, you know, so that we're not left with our pants hanging around our ankles. We have this meeting with the assistant warden and this major, and we present this information, and he's like, no, that's not how it works. We're going to buy this stuff now. So he already made up in his mind, despite the clear factual evidence, we could pinpoint the cameras. Yeah, this PTZ camera that was in the yard, blah, 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 it went out after 2 months. We got a free replacement because, you know, it is what it is. And that's like a $5,000, $6,000 PTZ camera because it was super PTZ, super optics. But no, this is the same guy that didn't want to buy any spares, despite these cameras being like severe security situations that require to have spares on hand. He said no because they cost too much. And it's like, well, you realize that if this camera goes out, it's going to take a couple of months to get a replacement camera. It's just not like you're going to go to Walmart and pull it off the shelf. These are some high-end security cameras. And he's like, no. And so it's like, no, and of course we courtesy copied the associate warden, the warden, and even the higher ups, and, you know, and then we got told we're not supposed to email anybody else outside of our immediate supervisor. So yeah. And then lo and behold, what happens? That super speed, incredibly, the camera broke. It was outside warranty. We didn't have a replacement. I get called at 2 o'clock in the morning. It says, hey, you need to come fix this. And it's like, I'll come out there and I'll check it out. So I go out there, check it out. Camera's dead. What are the odds? Well, you need a replacement. We don't have a replacement because Major so-and-so said we can't buy that. But it's also a requirement that you have to have that because it's in such a secure, it's such a needed security item that it has to be there. And it's like, well, I can't ship you one. That's just not what I do. It's not how that works. We can try to get a rush order and we could maybe get, you know, a week or two, you know, you try to call in some favors and get this thing, but you're still going to be weeks without this camera. Well, that's not acceptable. Not my problem. If I have the camera, I'll put it in. No matter what time of day or night you want me, if you have the camera, I will put it in and I will make it work. That was it. And Stupid people can't figure that out. So anyway, long story short, it ends up that this major did buy all of these cameras and equipment, hid it from us. We didn't know nothing about it until like I think it was like 3 years after the fact. And then it's like I had a call from one of the officers. It's like, hey, we got a bunch of your equipment up here and we don't know why. It's like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, there's this closet and it's locked and we're doing inventories and I got the keys and there's a bunch of cameras in here. It was a big room. And it's like, we don't have any cameras. We didn't order anything. Everything comes to our office. We secure it in our storage and it's under lock and key, the whole 9 yards. We don't have any spares. I don't know what you're talking about. There's no, subcontractors that are bringing in other cameras or equipment. So me and my boss, we go up there and we go into this room and there's all this equipment. And it's like, holy shit, there's tons of dust on this. And it's like, we're looking at the dates and it's like, you gotta be kidding me. He ordered it all. Here's the problem. He ordered all of that. And these were the old cameras that had low resolution. So as time passed, not only are all of these cameras and all of this equipment out of warranty, so if we get bad ones dead on arrival or they break, we can't get free ones to replace it. It is a lower resolution than what the prison wanted at that time. But no, you can't tell stupid people anything. I don't know. Fairtha says, easiest explanation for this camera thing is they just don't care. I have the same thing at work right now. Management is actively ignoring expert warnings because that is not what they want. I know. They can't trust the subject matter experts. When I told them that they needed X, Y, and Z equipment because of the limitations, the physical limitations, like gravity, or resistance and over distance and all that stuff, that they wouldn't listen to all that. And it's like, no, we're not going to buy this equipment. Well, then you're not going to get that audio. You're not going to get that camera feed because the distance is too long and you don't want to buy fiber optics and you don't want to buy this or that. But you think that you just hook up a camera and you can run a mile worth of wire that you're going to get that camera feed. You can't even do that with a webcam. What makes you think you're going to do it? Honestly, it was a mile of wire. It was like, no, because they didn't want to buy a power supply. They didn't want to buy, it's just like, well, you got a power supply here. We'll just run it all the way around and we'll just put it there and we'll set up a new camera. It's like, no, there's this thing, resistance about distance. Absolutely insane, insanely stupid. I don't want to be racial, but stupid white guy. That's all. His name was Trevors. His first name was Trevors. That tells you all he needs to know. It was just, that guy. And he was on track to be a warden. Oh my gosh. Seriously. Dude couldn't find his ass with two hands and a compass. Absolutely crazy. Fairtha says, no, Steve, it's your fault because apparently you cannot give them what they want. It's just not good enough. I know. The story continues. There was some other project that we were doing that he didn't believe my boss or me, the two subject matter experts when it came to electronics for our prison, and I've installed over 900 some odd cameras and systems and upgrades and stun fences and fiber optics and blah, 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 and, all kinds of high-speed stuff. No, don't listen to me. This cannot be done. According to the laws of physics and the laws that govern our universe, what you want cannot be done. It's impossible. I said it. My boss said it. Even the electrical captain, the guy with the electrical degree and has the electrician, who's a licensed electrician, who's a master electrician. He has his his big license or whatever. I can't remember what it was. But even he said it was impossible. So what happens? This major puts out a bid to hire a company to come in, which is going to cost tens of thousands of dollars, to come in and do this assessment to make it work the way he wants it to work, guess what happened? These people show up. They're electronics technicians. They're electricians. We meet them, and it's like, hey, you're supposed to meet these people. These are the contractors coming in to do the assessment to make this thing work that you said that didn't work. And they're like, we had our morning coffee, we brought them to the shop, we're sitting there and we're drinking the coffee and everything, and they're like, yeah, why are we here? And it's like, well, here's the situation. Here's what he told you, right? And he's, yeah. You can't do that. He says, yeah, that's what we told him too. He said he wanted an official assessment because he knows that it could be done. And we're just looking at each other dumbfounded. It's like, yeah, you're getting free money now because you're coming in and doing an assessment. And he says, what did you guys recommend? And so we laid it all out. Here's the equipment, here's the layout, here's all this and this and this, blah, 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 A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, everything is to the T. The guy picks it up, the lead consultant is like, yeah, I don't know why you called us in here. This is how you do it. This is how we would do it. Matter of fact, it's a good idea that you did here and this over here. That, you know, I never thought of doing it that way, but I'm gonna keep that tip. So the assessment is, we have coffee, we drive out and look at the facility and the places and all this stuff, and they're like, yeah, you know exactly what you're doing. We would do the exact same thing. So at the end of the 2 days of the assessment, which we just ended up having coffee and whatever, after the first day of going out, they come back. We have this big meeting with the warden, associate warden, the major, Trevor's, and then my boss, me, and then these consultants that got paid tens of thousands of dollars to do this assessment for the thing that the major said that could be done, that they said, yeah, here's our plan. This is what you need to do. And they present this plan. The major, oh, okay, well, we need to do this, and we can hire you. And of course, it's got to go out to bid. You know, that's a whole nother deal. But yeah, we'll use you. And then the dude, the lead consultant was awesome. He stands up and he says, hey, I just want you to know that this isn't our plan. This is the plan for your guys. You guys have the most knowledgeable electricians and electronic specialists that we've seen. This is their plan. This is exactly what we would do. So then the major's half-stepping and trying to do all that stuff. Yeah, it was monumentally stupid, it ends up. Yeah. Matt Mick says, aren't you glad you retired, John? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. Working for stupid people is draining. It is really draining when you have to work with stupid people. The day that I quit the Department of Corrections was awesome. It was awesome. It was really, really good. But yeah, according to therapists, I was the problem. And the cool thing is that I quit, and then my boss quit shortly after that. I just had enough. And then they didn't have anybody to do our jobs. And then they ended up getting some wackadoos in there that, yeah, they got hired. They lowered the standards, and it's like a bag of hammers, dumb as a bag of hammers, and they couldn't do the job. And I got calls after I quit, and my boss got calls after he retired. And yeah, it's like, hey, yeah, we need to talk to you about doing this, and this, and this system over here. If you could come in, and it's like, yeah, I'll come in. It's going to cost you $200 an hour for me to come in. And they're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I said, I don't work for free. I said, if you want me to come back and tell you how all these systems work and how to fix them, I charge $200 an hour. And there's a travel time that you got to pay, an hour there and an hour back. So that's $400 automatically that you have to pay me, and then the time starts for $200 an hour for however long that I got to be there. And we don't take off for lunch. So, and they're like, well, we can't pay that. Okay, not my problem. But you worked here. I said, yeah. Key being past tense. I worked there. I no longer work there. If you want me to work there, you're going to hire me at $200 an hour. And it's like, yeah, well, we're not going to do that. Okay, then don't call my house. Unless you're going to hire me, don't call me ever again. So yeah, it was a total shit show. Oh, and it should be noted that this same prison, it was Fremont Correctional Facility, their big boiler house, their brand new boiler that was fixed, replaced through, it was so sketchy. During the time that I was there, when they finally fired it up, it blew up and killed people. Asia is the best country in the world. It's got some promises. Yeah. Mad Mick says they appreciate you after you're gone. Yeah, they tried to appreciate me back for free, and that didn't work out. Fun. But Asia's a good country. Korea's a good country. Off topic. I know you said you've been in Southeast Asia and Japan. Have you ever been to China? If so, did you like it? No, I haven't been to China. I've been to Japan, been to Korea, Thailand, and we're going to take a trip to the Philippines. I stopped in Taiwan one time. I had a little bit of time there, but I haven't been to mainland China. So maybe one of these days we're going to end up going to China. I'd like to see a few things there. Even though the Koreans and Chinese aren't getting along, I would still like to see China. Mad Mick says, wow, that's insane. Steam boilers? Oh yeah, the big ones. Like, the boiler in your house, the water heater boiler type thing, it's usually maybe about that tall. We're talking a boiler that is like, 15, 20 feet, huge, massive. It exploded, it leveled the building, and unfortunately it killed the guy on call and a couple of inmates, and it was just horrible. Let me see. Let me see if I can find out. Here it is. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, here it is. So I'm looking for that. Mad Mick says, heard things about Shanghai and other places in China recently. I'm looking forward to it. There's some places that I want to go and see, definitely some tourist areas. I'd like to go to Shenzhen and see the electronics and stuff like that over there. I think that would be really cool. They got some cool electronic stuff. He says, wow, that's sad. I do not like steam supplied myself. Have to be careful making adjustments on it. I know that boilers are nothing to joke with. I mean, once you get them set, and if you know what you're doing and how, you got to have somebody smart on it. You can't have, just hire anybody off the street. They have to have experience. Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. Ferrithus says, I love all this old tech. They're repurposing old 450 kilowatt magnet power supplies in the early 90s at work right now. Here it is. Let me show you. Sergeant Voth. Close. So there it is. Let me see if we can make this a little better. CDOC identifies sergeant killed in boiler explosion at Fremont Correction. That's Voth. Yep, Joshua Voth. Dude was good. We had barbecues there at the prison. He was a good guy. Worked with him a lot. Released the identity of killed, and this was December 5th, 2019. And that was shortly after I quit. He was killed in the line of duty as an accident. Just before noon, fire crews were called to the scene. They found the boiler had suffered a catastrophic failure. In other words, it exploded. And the whole fixing of that thing was crazy. It was so sketchy. The investigation is ongoing. They confirmed that Voth was killed by the boiler explosion. It's not clear what led to the explosion. I know what led to the explosion: stupidity and people not knowing their job. They had a company come in and install the new boiler, and obviously those people were not well versed in that. He had been with DOC since 2016 as correctional support licensed trade supervisor, according to the department. He had a wife and 3 children. Yeah, he did trades for a while, working in the prisons, and then he ended up switching over to the maintenance. That whole thing was so screwy. There was a lawsuit and the whole 9 yards. I'm not sure the outcome of that, but yeah, Voth ended up getting, he got the short end of the stick because there was a lot of problems with the contractors that came in that were replacing the boiler that obviously didn't know what they were doing. There was problems. Even Voth himself was like, hey, that's not how this works, blah, blah, blah. This is this, this is this. There's some idiots there. And again, the whole thing was, Voth was smart on the boiler. He was. And even, who's the other guy that worked on the boiler system a lot? I can see his face. I can't remember his name. But I remember even he was talking about it, saying, yeah, these people you need to be careful. You need to kind of supervise them to make sure that what they're doing is right, because the people installing it it's very questionable, very sketchy. So unfortunately, it was a huge boiler. Yeah. Gas boilers have made tons of safety switched on them, though. The new ones, at least. Yeah. I mean, they used to have the coal fire boilers back in the day. And then they transitioned over to the gas-fired and the gas boilers. And that thing is huge. I mean, a monster of a boiler system. And they would have alarms on there where it would start running hot or whatever, an alarm. Of course, we did electronics. It would sound the alarm to go from the boiler house, which was down on the far side of the prison, up to the command and control center, where the command center was. Master control was at, and alarms would go off, so we were responsible for wiring all that. All of our shit worked. That's all I'm saying. But that whole boiler system was just sketchy from the get-go. They had problems where they came in, this is what we're going to do, and it's like people that worked on the boilers and did shifts working boilers. Mainly Voth worked night shift. He did work some days, but they had like a rotating schedule. They didn't have a lot of people working on the boiler systems. But he was pretty decently smart on that stuff. So it was funny how all the years that he worked on the boilers, never had any problems with the old boiler systems. But when they get the new one in there, and then all the rumors and all the problems that they saw, there's simple electronics problems that they had with the boiler that my boss got called in on. It was like, these guys don't even know how to do basic stuff. So yeah, it was really sketchy. So I hope his wife sued the shit out of the state and that company, because it was just, the safety inspection, all of that was all sketchy as hell. So yeah. It just problematic. Just very problematic. So yeah, that ends up a lot of problems. A lot of problems in the Department of Corrections. Maybe we'll do another video on that. So let's see, what else we got? Questionable visa runs. This is an interesting situation. So we're going to transfer, move over, transition. That's the word I was looking for, transition. We're going to transition over to visa runs. Here in Korea, it's very interesting because we don't get a lot of drama here in Korea because the standards are high for visas, income requirements, security, background checks, the whole 9 yards. So you don't get a lot of stupid people here in Korea. Maybe I'm the exception. They had a soft spot for me. $10:20 right now. We've been at this for a few hours. We had some good discussions and interesting stuff. So we got that going on. Always good to have you aboard on the channel and the streams. Again, great people. I like hanging around good people. Makes me a better person, so I appreciate you all for that. And for people setting me straight on stuff like Nefertum on the F6 visa, and other people like Ferrithus, he's helped me out with 3D printing stuff, and other people like, hey, idiot, that's not how it works. This is the real deal. You know, I enjoy that. I appreciate that. So I can help somebody else. That's what it's all about. So with that being said, please do the favor of liking and subscribing to the channel. I would really appreciate that. That would be a thing. And with that being said, thank you very much. We're going to the obligatory outro. Yes, here it is. A bunch of people bought me coffee. You want to do that, there's a link. If you don't, the very best thing that you could end up doing is liking and subscribing to the channel. If you want to contact me, if you want to send me links, there's my email address, officialthevariedlife@gmail.com. I got a number of people who send me articles or videos or just say hi or whatever it is. Yeah, that is what's going on. So it was a good one. It was a good one. Ferrith says, take care. Seeing you. Dinner time. So yeah, he's going to get some food. Same here as me. Billy Mack, hey, pops in, says, thanks, Steve. Well, thank you for stopping by and checking it out. I appreciate that as well. And with that, we will see you all on the next video. Peace. Keeping it real. Keeping it real.